Good day and good evening, and welcome back to Walk and Talk with me, Caetsu Chaiji, but you can just call me Kai. So, as usual with Walk and Talk, I have somewhat a plan of where we're going, and as we walk, it's a great time if you wanted to talk about something, if you have an idea, maybe I have something we can talk about, and it could be Final Fantasy XIV, it could be something else, sort of like a Q&A. And as we pause on the way, maybe we'll also just walk the whole way and then just do it all at the end. I have a bunch of clips from all of you that we might want to review, whether it's a clip of something weird that happened, something interesting that happened, or maybe you ran a duty and you would like some advice on how to improve. Whatever it is, the option to post your clips is in the clips review room on the Discord server, and there's pretty much always access to a link to the Discord server in the description or on the channel, and so on. And sometimes Aradel will post a link as well, or sometimes I will, so that you can find it there too. And that's basically it, like that one. Thank you, Aradel. Exactly. And that's essentially what we're doing. We are on Ravana Materia, which is an OCE data center, it is in the OCE data center, which means that you can visit and join the walk regardless of where you are from, because all data centers can visit OCE. The only thing you have to do is when you do that, if you haven't visited recently, you have to log out, go to the main menu, choose Materia as if you had a character there. Go and see that you don't, or maybe you do, then go back to your home world and then use the Visit Another Data Center option in the character selection screen. And then you can come over. That's how it works. And yeah, we are starting in Falcon's Nest, which is where we left off last time. Now, that said, hey Telma, hey Aradel, hey Mizu, hey Lana, hey Jinmonica, hey Zaf, hey Kaj, hey Hobozon, hey DPS, hey Mullet. Hope you're all doing very well. And, well, we almost made it to Ishgard. Hey Knight, hope you're doing well as well. There we go. I can control my camera like I want to control it. Right. So, what can we even talk about? What should we talk about? Normally I can't even start on a topic that I might have on hand before there is a question. This time I went into this without an idea. Ain't that a classic? I don't even know what to say. Hey Rust, hope you're doing well. So funny detail, just random detail, is that the reason why I usually do these walks as Fisher is simply because it has the sneaking effect, so that you can walk past mobs. So I don't have to deal with the possibility of a mob being in my way as I walk. And the reason why I use Fisher and not any of the other gatherers is just because if you choose Miner, it's like, well, why didn't you choose Botanist? If you choose Botanist, it's like, well, why not Miner? And Fisher is like it's like the third option that doesn't incite that question in before I've now incited that question. But that's the reason. And yeah, on top of that, the glam was gifted to me. So, bonus there. Why didn't you choose Blacksmith? Because Blacksmith does not have the sneaking option. They do not have that ability. So if I was doing this walk as a blacksmith and I walk through a high-level zone, I might just get smacked and die from a random mob going, nope, as I pass them. And you can expand that one to all of the other crafters as well. Yeah, it's easy to miss because like when you just start a gatherer, you get this and you actually have to toggle it, but you might not even realize that you're supposed to do that, or it just doesn't come up. And when you hit 27, you don't have to click it anymore. So it kind of just like fades into the background. And then you don't, then you might forget that they have this mechanic altogether. Or you may have walked into a zone that is much higher level than yourself and died anyway and been like, what? Sneaking doesn't work? Except that it's because it has a level limit. And this week I remembered my tea. Ain't that amazing? I think I forgot last time. Came out to the kitchen after the stream with a big mug with a with a tea bag in it. And now it was cold. And the weirdest bit being that when I finished the stream, I was like, weird. Where was I feel like I forgot something. And then I was like looked over where I normally put my mug when I finished it. Like, well, my tea isn't there. Like what remained of it isn't there. So I guess I didn't have any. And go out to the kitchen and sure enough, there it was. Hey, Meowells, hope you're doing well, and thank you for the new emote. I have a Meowells made a nodding emote, which I have included over on Discord. I've also added it to Twitch because they also allow GIFs. I don't believe YouTube does that yet, so it would look a little weird to just have an emote that is like... Elana says, my tea is missing. If you have any information, please contact me on Discord. It's an amazing one, Mewells. Thank you so much. Love says, I have emote animations off anyway. Right. Then you will simply have the then the new Kai Nod emote just looks like a lizard looking at you very judgmentally. Hey, Sock. Hope you're doing well. But that is a very good one. Now we just need well, I don't know if we just need. We don't need anything. It's just improvements. The Lizard of Judgment. Hey, Swipnerd. Hope you're doing well. One that I guess might be missing, and one that I sort of wonder why I didn't actually get back when I got all of the initial emotes for the channel. Is a like a high emote of some sort. Now that would be great. I think we could also use other things, but a high emote would be fantastic. But for now we have nodders, which is amazing. Me so high. Is that a request? Mewell says the non-animated version gives me surprise Pikachu vibes. We could add an unmoving version and call it something like that. Just get a fitting name for it. She says, is that a request? I mean, as has always been the case, when people have made emotes that are like related to the channel, I've tried my best to use it for something. So, I mean, if you want to make it, you can be sure that I would use it. Hey Ham, hope you're doing well. I've been... that is a long quote, Ham. Whiteout. An interesting thing about these walks is that as we progress through the game, because so much of the traveling in the game ends up just being, and then you teleport to here, and then you teleport to here. Like, once you have enough gil to regularly be able to afford doing that, it quickly turns into that. You can easily forget what zones are connected where. Like, for instance, the fact that Kurthas here is connected to North Shroud and Madonna. And another funny one that I realized because of these walks, and I have mentioned this before, is that unless you already are on La Nocia, there is no way for you to walk to La Nocia. Which is to say, you cannot, from here, walk to Limsa without, like, using a boat or something. For some reason. Held the poor for Tom's card for Horseford. But I was busy walking. How would I help? I only have a fishing rod. Hidden in my back pocket. Someday I might run out of Thunder God quotes, but that day's not today. Yeah, he sure has a lot. What will you do when you run out, Ham? Hey, Exodi. Hope you're doing well. The reason is the ocean between Aldenard and Vilbrand. That's true. Hey, Crab Galaxy. Hope you're doing well. Almost like La Nocia is an island or something. Yeah, indeed. Xanthus, originally when I did, back in 2014, I walked through northern Fenland to Modona and was very confused why the route seemed very filled with dangerous enemies and an Imperial castrum. Oh. Yeah, I see what you mean. Presumably supposed to come around this way. Did you know Nocia is an anagram of oceans? Yes. Hey, Leah. Hope you're doing well. It is fairly difficult to walk across water. Yes. Hey, Papone. Hope you're doing well. We could walk under the water just fine, though. I don't think we can. We would be able to swim under it. Hey, Yannick. Hope you're doing well. Not much pig today, I see. Well, I mean, doesn't have to be the pig shirt every day, does it? You know what? We could do the Madonna Thanalan walk. We do that. Someone says I've been wanting to make an alt and go through the MSQ where I never teleport because I realized I don't know how to walk around basically any cities. I only teleport around. Well, to be fair, when you make an alt, you would have to go around grabbing all the ether shards anyway. Hey, Betelgeuse. Hope you're doing well as well. But that is the thing, is that the reason why we often forget, I feel, is that because of aetherites and aether shards, you only really do the trek from place to place once, and then you just teleport to where you need to be. And that's good enough. And then, because a lot of these places you reach the first time, sometimes in the context of reaching the place in the MSQ, which means you might enter the zone in an unusual way. So you might not even realize that that's where you came from. Or, you know, just blindly walking the direction the game tells you to walk. And again, you just go, oh, now I'm here. No. Well, there's an aetherite over there. Yoink. Grab that. And then you're on your merry way. It's been unfortunate, especially since they added flying. Most people don't pay much attention to the world around them. One of my friends specifically never teleports when they're doing MSQ because of that. Yeah, it's true. I will say the addition of flying is already quite a weird issue in a way. Because it solves one problem and then introduces another, typically. Yannick says, so recently I've been more strongly noticing some patterns in Palace, especially that I got input from other runners. And it seems as if the devs put a bigger time unit, like day or week, into the RNG equations. Oh! You know, funny little side bit on that, Yannick, like slightly related to that. So like like end of last week, I put out a short about Squeenix RNG. Something that I didn't include was like my own ideas of how it all works, because RNG is weird. It could be that it's just like that we're trying to observe a pattern and it's just random being random. And it could be, you know, false positive. It could also be that it actually works like that. But one thing that I feel like I've sometimes noticed is that you might have, like, for instance, on a boss, you might pull the same boss like over and over and over again for like 30 minutes, and like 11 out of 12 pulls, it does option A in a, you know, A-B situation. And then one of those 12 pulls, it does option B. The reason why I said 12 is just because I thought 2.5 minutes, that works, I guess, you know, classic 2.5 GZDs and all that. And then after the 30 minutes are up, suddenly it's almost as if the chance distribution is like shaken up. Just let's try again, refresh, and now the split is like maybe 11 out of 12 in the other direction, or 7 out of 12, so like 7 of one, 5 of the other, as if, you know, they re-rolled the probability matrix, whatever we're gonna call it. And if the reason is that they get their RNG, hypothetically, if they got their RNG from, I don't know, like half an hour doesn't really work like that, but if, for instance, that the RNG equations came from some values that included what hour of the day it was, then this would totally work if you like start up like a set at the you know, second half of an hour. You do 30 minutes, hour is up technically, new hour starts, and then things get different. Like things suddenly are different. And The thing is something that is worth mentioning is that while RNG is very, very weird and complicated, and also humans are relatively bad at actually determining whether RNG is fair and accurately representing random chance, because like let me just put it like this, that it turns out that you could hit a 95% accuracy move 50 times in a row and think, yep, that's fair, and then you miss once and you go, rigged! Even though that a 5% miss chance is a 1 in 20. And what's worth keeping in mind is that first of all would be technically fair and in your favor potentially, but part of what makes this really complicated is that well, let's just say that computers don't do RNG either. Like, they're entirely deterministic. The way that you get RNG out of a computer is by hooking it up to something that is random, or you produce something that results in a somewhat random event. Like, a classic one for, like, I think, like, old Pokemon games is that when you turn on the game, like, the RNG calculator is based on time since you turned on the machine. And that means that you can force a specific result by, you know, turning on the machine and then doing something really quickly, or in a very specific amount of time. And the reason why they used something like that is because, given that those old games were, you know, kind of locked to their location and didn't have internet access or anything, meant that they would have to carry the RNG generator with them somehow. And that kind of limits the options, right? But one thing they did have was a timer that they could just add and have running. I made a, like, back in Gymnasium for my exam project in programming, I made a very simple and very janky snake game. You know, grab the apples. The snake was squares and the apples were squares. Very old school. And my RNG system was literally that I just re-rolled the RNG, like a re-rolled RNG, like every X amount of time or something like that. And I mean, that worked, but it also meant, take note that the timer started on this RNG system the moment that you opened the program, but you had to click start to actually start the game. So you couldn't guarantee that you got the same result every time unless you knew exactly how, like, when you had to click. Not a very optimal way to do it, but it is a very simple way to do it. As Zav says, proper RNGs use something like background radiation. As Zav says, I do wish they'd put in some sort of pseudo-random distribution for some of their RNG mechanics, because never getting a feather proc in a minute or two segment feels bad. Yes. I'll get back to that very shortly, because I do see some other comments that I need to catch up on here. Hey Shaven, hope you're doing well. My data center seems pretty dead. Should I transfer or stick it out? I feel like just transferring when I log in defeats the purpose of being on an empty center that needs people. Which data center are you on? Mizunashi says Mythbusters episode on Squeenix RNG. I wouldn't be able to make that because I don't think I would be able to get convincing proof of anything. Belgius says Squeenix RNG is diabolical. Like, I have 200 plus Tyrant Pulse, but I've seen 4-way Fireball like 3 times, maybe 4. It always was 2-way Fireball. At my clear attempt, I wiped the group just because I'm not used to 4-way. Say Naomi, hope you're doing well. That is a classic Betelgeuse. That is the quintessential experience of Squeenix RNG. Inox, hope you're doing well. Internal clock tick rate seed setter. Yeah. So the thing that Zav asked for is, I believe in World of Warcraft, this is commonly referred to as procs per minute. Or even real procs per minute, ppm or rppm. I can't remember exactly what the difference is, but basically what this is meant to produce is that when we look at, if we look at, for instance, like if we read, I don't know, Fire 1 in Final Fantasy XIV, which says that it has a 40% chance of giving your Firestarter proc, well, we'd have to assume that 2 out of 5 Fire 1 casts would give Firestarter, considering that you will have the mana to cast Fire 1 at least 5 times per Astral Fire state. Even at level 50, that means that you should find that you get 2 Firestarter procs at least per Astral Fire state. Preferably more. Because I do believe you can afford, well, let me just count that. You can afford 6 Fire 1s, although you'd probably typically cast 5 and then do Flare. Kind of depends on what you're planning to do. And yeah, exactly, Popon. On average, you should expect to get 2 or even more if you do 6 Fire 1s. On average. Now, what procs per minute resolve is that it kind of depends on like the time scale of things. But let's say that we wanted to say, we want to be sure that when you cast Fire 1, when the battle is over, you should have roughly 40% like hits on those flips, or it's technically not flips, you should, because it is not a fair coin, right? You should have 40% Fire 1s producing Firestarter, roughly, because, you know, it can still like lean against you or for you. The way you could do that is you start the fight, the probability of getting a Firestarter proc is 40%. You cast Fire 1, you don't get a proc. Okay, well, how about if I'm making it a little bit simple just for the example. How about if we make the probability 50% now? Then you cast Fire 1 again, no Firestarter proc. Okay, what if the probability is 60%? And when you finally get a proc, you'd of course like not completely reset it, but you like pull it back so that as you're getting lucky, the proc rate drops to force you to be unlucky as payment. And when you're unlucky, the probability goes up again to even out this system so that you will get roughly the amount of Firestarter procs you're supposed to get. I believe there is a chance. I don't think it is like that necessarily, but I believe there is a chance that that Esprit gauge from your dance partner could work like this. And I'm saying there is a chance because that would be an extremely easy way to make Esprit gauge generation like solve itself. If you have a specific estimated amount of like 10 Esprit given to the dancer from its dance partner per minute, then it doesn't matter whether they try to like roll the dice more frequently by having a faster GZD. It doesn't matter. It doesn't do anything because sure, you might like quickly churn through a few procs right at the start, but the moment that has happened, then you're rolling with a much more unlucky chance for the rest of the fight to compensate for you getting a lot of procs a little quickly. I'm assuming, based on just the way that the tooltip is described for this Esprit generation, I'm sort of assuming that the way that it actually works is closer to some fixed number for each job that might be adjusted based on GZD or something like that. I'm not 100% sure. Hey QPLR, hope you're doing well. I've never tuned into one of these. I'm not disappointed. By the walk? Shaman says, not sure if it was answered, but Dynamis, or however it's spelled, is where I am currently. Yeah, Dynamis is a data center that is in a weird spot. It is it was made at a time where 14 had, like, I would say, an explosion in player count. And at the time, it might have seemed needed. Now, it isn't really needed. So that kind of results in a situation in there's plenty of space on the other data centers. Not so much on Ether, but on the other options you have, there's plenty of space. And Dynamis is like, anything could happen. It's possible that in, like, I don't know, a year, 8.0 comes out, and it's so amazing that the player count of Final Fantasy XIV just doubles overnight. Then I think Dynamis would actually be needed. But at present, it's very difficult because Dynamis has a worse case of the problem that Chaos has over on EU, which is there's plenty of space on the bigger data centers, so you could just go there. And the benefits of being on a smaller data center aren't many. So the average player will just go, okay, so why should I make a character on the small data center? Because you say so? Are there any bigger data centers that have, like, that give the road to 90 bonus and all that if I make a character there? If yes, then I'll just go there. Cool. Hope you're doing well. As Zav said, and as Shakur said, I believe a major help to these problems would be region-wide party finder. I do think that would be very helpful. I don't know how the infrastructure looks for them to be able to do that, if it is even possible for them to do that. But the major problem right now is that if the players are on a different data center, then why are you not there? Why would you be on your smaller one? And it has this, like, self-perpetuating cycle where, as, like, just to take the EU case, a few years ago, the distribution between Chaos and Light was very, very balanced. I believe the story goes that Chaos was actually originally the raiding data center. Like, just like how people go to Ether for raiding, Chaos was the place you went if you were a raider. Then I have heard that what caused the change was actually what's it? Light Party does Ultimate, LPDU, which of course did Ultimates on Light, which just happened to would be just enough of a push that people were more likely to just go over to Light and be there anyway, and do Party Finder stuff there anyway. And if the split before was like roughly 50-50, if you just move it just so that the Light is 51 to Chaos is 49, then there is technically a very, very difficult to perceive difference. And if people notice it, it goes beep, and then it's 52-48, and then it's 53-47, and then it's 55-45, and then it's 60-40, and then it's 70-30, and then it's 90-10, and then Party Finder dies on Chaos. I might have remembered the name of the place wrong, but it is LPDU, I believe. And that's basically how it goes. And once it has happened, it's extremely difficult to fix the problem. Thank you, Lano. And I have explained this in videos before. There isn't an easy solution, and the solutions that exist and that have worked, quote unquote, on these types of problems, usually, like the solutions that people can come up with is, well, we just have to not do that. Like, players that are from Chaos should just stay on Chaos, and players from Light should stay on Light, and then we just foster the raiding scene on each of our data centers. But that's not going to happen. And it's also possible that there's more players on Light already. So even if we did that, the players on Chaos would be at a disadvantage. So why would you do that? You wouldn't. And the solutions that might actually help or work outright typically involve removing the problem altogether. So essentially what I'm saying is any solution you can come up with that leaves the problem there and just assumes that people will fix it out of the goodness of their hearts will not work. Thank you, Ardell. Right, thank you, Zaf. Light Party Finder does ultimate. Problem is, transferring to Light also has secondary effects. Yeah, I guess so. Crab Galaxy says maybe that was something they were thinking about when they tested cloud servers. Oh yes, how long was that ago now? Wasn't that in like mid-Endwalker? And to give some examples of removing the problem, fixing the problem, quote unquote, is originally, again, I've talked about this before, I mentioned it in the video out linked. Originally, the way Frontline worked was that when you queued for Frontline, when a match popped, you would always be put on the team that you had chosen to represent. So if you chose Maelstrom, you would always be red team. That sounds like thematically fitting. It also makes sense considering how Final Fantasy XIV took heavy inspiration from World of Warcraft, which, well, you know, two factions. However, what happened is that for some reason, Maelstrom had a higher win rate than the two other factions. Notably, Adders had a particularly low win rate. Like, for some reason, the players that either just didn't care for PvP or were outright just bad at it were more likely to be on Team Twin Adders. And the ones that were better and more interested in PvP tended to be on Maelstrom. And then, specifically the Flames, the middle of the pack, had, you know, a more mixed player set for some reason. But this is just like, that's how you get the ball rolling, because then it doesn't really cost that much to switch your Grand Company. So what people would do is, if you were actually interested in winning, you would switch to Maelstrom, which had the effect that Maelstrom would be, you know, more players, arguably because the people that actually cared to win would, you know, be interested in PvP, would be feeling Maelstrom, meant that maybe the good players from Adder would move to Maelstrom. Some of the good players from Flames would move to Maelstrom, which just made it even more lopsided. And, like, the end result was also, and this might sound familiar if you've PvP'd in World of Warcraft, is that if you queued for frontline as Maelstrom, the queue time would be obnoxiously long because there were a lot of people queuing. And if you queued for frontline as Adder, the queue would probably be relatively short, but you would be queuing up for a massacre. You would be losing. And how do you fix that? Because you could go, well, can't players just like spread out on the grand companies more? Yes, they could, but why would they? That's not to the individual's advantage. That would just be unoptimal. Why would you do that? You wouldn't. What you do is you just make it so that your faction choice doesn't actually affect frontline. Problem solved. Filoni, the way that you do is you need to open PvP profile here. And then there's job role and stuff. Like, this is your PvP actions. Pro tip. Before entering frontline, if you're not if you're not well versed in frontline, before you try to queue for frontline or crystalline conflict, teleport to this zone, Wolf's Den Pierre. If you have access to crystalline conflict or frontline, you should have this. The reason is that that zone is technically a PvP zone, so when you enter, your hotbars will poof disappear and be replaced with PvP stuff. So you have to fix your hotbar for PvP there where it's safe. And you can even find some striking dummies to practice, or you can duel someone 1v1. Things like that. So you can get a little bit of figuring out your toolkit. I will, however, say, Filoni, that getting into the frontline match, discovering that you don't know what to do, and then just standing AFK is not the move. And I'm saying that both for your safety and also because it's just not cool to do that. The not cool is you're basically leaving your team at a massive disadvantage by, not participating. The second part is that it is actually, you're technically breaking the rules. And if someone were to, I can't exactly find it very easily. You're basically breaking the rules here under 1006 because you are technically refusing to participate in the completion of an instance. Your correct move in that moment was to leave and take the 30-minute penalty and the L. But it does this problem does explain why sometimes you'll find frontline matches where there's an individual that has done 0 damage but has taken damage. They went out into the fields and tried. But back to the point is that the way they solved this was just by removing faction choice as a relevant factor when doing PvP. Boom. No problem anymore, right? And that did solve that. You can't change the hotbars in frontline duty? Yes, you can. In fact, the simpler solution would probably have been to land in the duty, realize you don't have any hotbars, open Alliance chat, and just say, where are my hotbars? Someone might just go, you have to check PvP profile under character. So you're not completely screwed. You could do something. The reason why I said you'd have to quit if you're not, like, if you're just going to stay in AFK is because, well, I mean, if you don't know where the PvP profile is, then what can you do? Indeed, Shadow. I would hope so. Hope you're doing well. Try to find the quit button. It will replace your duty finder menu when you are on a duty. It'll say leave duty somewhere here. And it'll warn you that if you do leave, you'll get a penalty. The penalty is that you can't queue for anything. You're basically blocked from the duty finder for 30 minutes. Hams is hiding the PvP actions in the PvP profile was a bit of an odd choice on the dev's part instead of making a PvP actions tab in the normal actions menu. Right? There's plenty of space here. You could just put it here. Absolutely 100% agree. But to take some other examples of this problem, and again, I've mentioned these problems in this context before. I'll say, hey, Symmetricon, hope you're doing well. Another example of this has been, like, or rather, two examples of this is in World of Warcraft. Again, you know, to take inspiration from there, is that at times in WoW's history, there has been, because the PvP maps in WoW have typically not been symmetrical, there have been battlegrounds like Alterac Valley that happened to be asymmetrical in such a way where a specific faction had an advantage. And they usually would win. And sometimes there would just also be a greater interest in PvP from one faction than the other in a specific battle group. Not super important, but it's basically pseudo data center. It's basically the group of worlds that would be paired together for PvP matches. And, well, that's just how the cookie crumbles. They'd have to rework the whole battleground to fix that, right? Another example is how in World of Warcraft there has been races that had specific racial abilities that happened to be particularly convenient, which gave a specific faction a slight advantage in, I don't know, a raid or something. Which then meant that the top players were more likely to play that faction to have that advantage. And if that faction kept that advantage for long enough, then what happens is, you know, other players move to that faction to have that advantage and to be where the good players are. And that, you know, gradually moves more and more to the point where ratings, not even PvP, PvE stuff was so lopsided to one faction that it was completely broken in a way for the other faction, right? How did they solve that? They made it so that you can raid cross-faction. Again, remove the problem. Boom. Took a long time, but that they eventually decided to do that. There are some other limitations there, but they technically made it so that you can raid cross-faction. But there are limitations to it, but it is there. Hey, Bovomet, hope you're doing well. And that solves that. Shaman says, speaking of race advantage, I feel like Lala's run faster than everyone else. Why is this? Oh, and jump higher. Have you ever driven a very low car? Like a very small car, or a car where you're like really close to the ground? It feels like you're like it's driving way faster. Or alternatively, if you sit in like a large, like a truck or something, it feels like it's going really slow when it isn't. Hey, Seraph, hope you're doing well. Puts on an orc mask. My disguise is perfect. Ham says putting a PvP actions tab there would also give people a massive hint that PvP works on different job kits before queuing, though I think there's a tutorial question mark text dump that pops up when you first enter PvP instance. Yes, but also to unlock Frontline or Crystalline Conflict, you would have to have been in Wulfstan Pier, and when you enter Wulfstan Pier, your hotbars disappear. Like they become blank. So surely that it can happen, but I'm just saying that you have to have missed a flag somewhere that warned you to end up in that situation. Or alternatively, you did unlock these things years ago, and then when you did a Frontline now, you didn't know that they had reworked the whole thing, so all of your buttons were different. But again, I will say, you should have known that. Because, look, if you did PvP in, like, I don't know, Stormblood, and you played the game from Stormblood, and then maybe you kept playing the game all the way up to now, or you quit the game and came back now, well, your PvE jobs would have their hotbars completely scrambled and ruined. So obviously your PvP actions would also be scrambled and ruined, right? And again, it's easy to say you should have just known that, but I'm just saying that there is a limit to how much the game can do to save you from that. I would say that it would make sense if they had put some buttons on your hotbar, and I think they do. I do believe your available buttons are just dumped on your hotbar 1 when you initially enter Wulfstan Pier. I guess there is something to be said that maybe they should do something to help you know that your hotbars aren't in order. Hey Zoma, hope you're doing well. They could also do something like, when you choose this, that there is like an actual interactable button here or something that is like show PvP hotbars or something like that. Or they could even have a check where it's like, you don't actually have any PvP hotbars, or it could be like, you need to visit Wulfstan Pier. Just visit it at least once every 2 weeks. Like it'll check and be like, you haven't been to Wulfstan Pier in the last 2 weeks to renew your Frontline license. So you go there, see that your hotbars are empty. That could do something. I don't know how much it would do, but it could do something. Lana says, I think I have a level 15 character that could go and check that. You need to be level 30 to unlock PvP. And another example, because get this, this is not the only time that WoW has had to deal with these kinds of problems. I don't know how it looks right now, but many of the classic PvP servers that like straight up just has PvP in a lot of zones, commonly, almost regardless of what Blizzard tries to do, when the servers open initially, some servers will be like, you know, like balancing, like teetering on even balance between the two factions. But the moment that a faction gets like a slight advantage, what eventually happens is that it goes like, ooh, because, as it turns out, and we know this, WoW isn't the only game that has this problem. Final Fantasy XIV's Frontline isn't the only thing that has this problem. Players like to be on the winning team. Hey Ilya, hope you're doing well. Players like to be on the winning team. So it doesn't actually matter how hard you try as a developer to make it so that the balance is perfectly even. Because what's going to happen is that the moment that one side has a slight advantage, well, then those that have the disadvantage will observe that they're losing more. They might lose interest, so they might quit altogether. Or they might switch to a different server where they have the advantage. Nice, Aradel. Join the winning team at my Discord server. Nice. But because of that, it means that a lot of realms, of like classic WoW realms had this result where it actually didn't even matter. PvE realms could also run into this problem because there's that like an advantage disadvantage in their end too. For a PvP server, being on the team with more of your with more players on that faction means that you're going to win any open world battle essentially, because you might outnumber the enemy 3-1. Additionally, for the PvE angle, there will be more people to raid with. So, you know, similar problem. So you're very much incentivized through game mechanics to join the team with more players. And that's just it. Hey, Grimosaurus, hope you're doing well. And there isn't that much you can do, because players are very good at optimizing these things, and players are very good at finding the winning faction. And players will claim that no, I just want to have a fair fight and all that. I just want to, you know, play with the people. But what usually happens is that the moment you start losing too much, you stop having fun, right? You stop having fun with the game and then you quit. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? That, like, obviously you quit. Obviously you would quit if you are not having fun anymore. Like, big shock there. Obviously. And it's just that that's the sequence of how it goes. We also observed this with when New World had like a beta where it was almost like free, like full loot open world PvP, and well, what happened is that the weaker players just got farmed until they quit, and then, you know, the slightly stronger players that are now the weakest players got farmed until they quit. And at some point, who was left to play? And I know this is a weirdly long tangent for data center population in Final Fantasy XIV, but it's the same problem. The difference is just that making a character on Dynamis, good luck, Dynamo! Making a character on Dynamis gives you the advantage that anything that is in short supply, like anything that can be problematic with a high population, is not a problem. For instance, I'm pretty sure that it is pretty easy to get a house in Dynamis. But then what are you gonna do with the house? Good luck with the appointment, Crab Galaxy. Like, what are you gonna do with the house? Who's gonna visit it? On the other hand, anything that requires a lot of players to work doesn't work. Grimmy's also says, with about 4K frontline matches, I sit on about 33%, as it should be. So for me, it seems to be working somehow. I think you. I want you to. I'm not sure if I'm misunderstanding you, Grimmy, but this whole speech was about the fact that back in the day, the team you would represent in frontline would always be the team that, like, the specific grand company that you chose. This is not a thing anymore, precisely because people would win a team join. Like, they'd specifically switch to Maelstrom because they won more. I will inform you that I didn't know this, and I didn't PvP. I don't even know if I played the game at the time where it was, like, Grand Company specific. I'm not sure exactly the date where they changed it. I did. It was on topic, Grimosaurus. It's just more that I think that there was a misunderstanding. But yeah, optimally, you should see a roughly, 33% win rate across the board, you'd think. But the problem is that if the teams are completely randomly matched, then you being better should give you an advantage, right? So you should be able to do better as you get better. Or you might find ways to influence your win rate, like by bringing a pre-made, 4-man pre-made. Yannick says a good way to balance such things is by natural tension over loot and not forcing any teams like WoW factions. Limited loot opportunities naturally limit a guild size. And what's really complicated there is that the moment that any sort of world travel is introduced, things might get a little wacky on that. You get a lot of supplies on the low pop, and then you go to the high pop. Alright, Ross. Have a good rest. That is ultimately the reason why. What else could make a difference in a frontline match than a pre-made? A good commander. A good commander, pre-mades. I think those are the big things. Because 4 players that are like working together can actually be quite problematic for a whole team that is not working together. A commander only works if the others follow? Sure. As Cat and Asymmetricon says, even a bad commander is better than no commander, and that's also true. As I said, I do believe I said this in my tutorial on Crystalline Conflict from back in early Endwalker. Agreeing on a bad strategy is better than disagreeing and having no strategy. Which was an example because... so I was progging through getting Crystal Season 1, and I did get it. And the thing I often ran into in the Palaistra Crystalline Conflict map is that there is this like wind tunnel you can run to, and some players had decided that the best approach for this map was to use that wind tunnel to gank the enemy from the back. Unfortunately, this strategy was so incredibly common that a lot of teams had gotten wise to it and would just wait at the end of that tunnel. And the problem is that there were better strategies that didn't involve doing that exactly because the enemy team would just wait for you there. But if you try to enforce a different strategy, you would be, 3 players doing one strategy and 2 players doing another strategy, and the enemy team would kill the 2 guys, like trying to gank them from behind, and then they would 5v3 you and you'd lose. So it would have been better to, it would actually have been a more possible win if you had all 5 done with whatever strategy, but the same strategy and lost together. You would have had a better result anyway. You might even have won. And yeah, in other words, a bad commander is better than no commander. And at least in my experience and other people here's experience, people tend to follow the commander. As long as the commander isn't particularly obnoxious, and as long as the commander does some reasonable suggestions. So there's a lot you can do. But it is specifically like, if you want to increase your win rate in frontline, you have to work on being better at knowing what needs to happen. And the key here is that a lot of players, at least in my experience, will figure out what the correct answer is, but they will not be confident enough to voice it. So what they'll do is that they'll sit there thinking, why is everyone going over there? They shouldn't do that. And then when that inevitably goes wrong, they silently say to themselves, yeah, I knew it. They shouldn't have done that. Instead of just saying to the team, do this instead. Or alternatively, they say, don't do that. But pro tip, if you tell the frontline hive mind, don't go over there, what does the hive mind do? You told it that it can't do the only objective that it had right then. It can't do that. That's what you told it. That's not allowed. Option 1, ignore your request and do it anyway. Option 2, exactly, Ham. It scatters and dies because now it's not a death ball anymore. And they each person gets a different idea of what to do instead. So, pro tip for commander advice: do not say don't. Do say do. Tell people what to do, not what not to do. Because when you tell them what not to do, you leave the space of what they should do free and empty, and they will probably not choose the thing you hoped they would. And then you lose. Hams, a funny thing is which door, or not using a door you do in Clockwork Castle Town. In low ranks or casual, you will quite often see, or used to see, I don't know if that changed, you will often see teams take the door to the front, which is an extremely high risk play as it cuts off your own party's escape. That sounds about right. I was like, Crusher, hope you're doing well. And yeah, if you are enjoying the stream, it does help with like and all that. Algorithms. So thank you so much for the support. But yeah, genuinely, the most impactful thing you can do as an individual is to command the party. Tell them what to do. And of course, get good at actually telling them what to do. If you know what the correct move is, just tell them what it is. I did, like, it's a long time ago now, but I think one of my most insanely, like, landslide victories in on Salakar, you know, the one in Azim Steppe, was where the main thing the commander told us was, he repeatedly said, do not go for middle. Don't touch it. So our team never participated in any contest over the middle node. We just took everything else and then ganked someone when it happened. Meanwhile, the two remaining teams spent almost the entire match fighting over middle. And sure, the commander, the only other thing they typically did was that they would point out if there were two nodes to pick between that wasn't middle. They would like mark one, or they would say a cardinal direction, like go west. And that was one thing they would do. The other thing they would do is that when they determined that it was runtime, they would tell the team to fall back. And they would usually make the call before people started running. These three things was what they contributed. They said, don't take mid. Solved ties when you had to choose between A or B, and they called when we run. And the reason why that worked is because, as you said, middle is just a time waster, and ties is usually when you lose, because half your team will go for the left one and the other half will go for the right one, and the two other teams might be too far away from one of the nodes to like consider contesting it. So what happens is that your team, half of your team will face the entirety of one of the other teams, and the other half of your team will face the entirety of the other team, and then you lose on both fronts. But if you just choose to focus one and let another team take the other, then there's a chance that one of the other teams have sent like a little strike squad to try and sneak another node, so they're actually outnumbered and things like that. So you might just win. And what I see a lot in Frontline is a point where you lose a lot of points is you're fighting another team and node is taken over, someone won. Your ranged players just turn 180 and run because they have places to be. Your melees, like, they're like stuck in this tar pit of crowd control and people stabbing them in the back. They're like trying to escape, and as they're trying, they just see all the ranged players that could feasibly help them escape just run off and just whelp, and then they die. And this kind of experience of just dying because you're left behind can also be extremely tilting, which causes these players to be salty. They get more aggressive, they get annoyed, they will play worse. But if you have someone that will consistently order when the runaway happens, means that, well, the ranged know, okay, the melees have been told to scoot, so we know that it's happening. So the ranged are less likely to just go, well, there's no point sticking around, mount up, off with me, because they can at least see progress before they themselves pack their bags. And then you can all escape together. And this matters because every time a death happens on your team, somewhere between 5 and 10 points, I believe, is given from your team to the team that got the kill. So you might go up, grab a node that gives you, I don't know, 100 points, but y'all died getting it. So you basically just went, have the points, good sir. Yeah, you deserve them. And then you lose. So there's a lot of small things. And also, very importantly, it also gives them a huge amount of battle high, and you lose a ton of battle high. Anyway, I'll be right back, and maybe we'll check some clips. In the meantime, sanity restored. Alright, I'm back. Why would my team need an escape? Just win, forehead. Where did everyone go? We're hiding. Fantastic. So, speaking of clips, let me just see here. What do we have? We still have a bunch of M10S clips. We have Nox's Hades clip, which is the game Hades, not the duty. We have Ivis clearing a boss in Criterion. We have Shaq in Expedition 33. We have Zanko on M9S. We have Yasuo on Rambo Extreme. We have Agent Monica on Mistwake. If you have a clip, do let me know that you're there in the chat. So that you don't miss your clip. Agent Monica's here. Let's check that out then. Hey, Euphorium. Hope you're doing well. Does anyone know what the plant mount that had a huge mouth is called? That thing looked amazing. I'm pretty sure it's a marble. And I do believe it is from a Blue Mage achievement. Yes, that one. I believe it's a Blue Mage achievement, and I believe it's for like completing a whole bunch of hard content with the only Blue Mage present. Hey, Svara, hope you're doing well as well. Cleared Hades Extreme in a full party of Hades game cosplays. And yeah, also true, it has to be synced. If that wasn't clear. It has to be synced. Whoop. Right, so we have Agent Monica in Mistwake looking for some advice. That is an interesting time for the monk to use all of their buffs. A smaller thing is my suggestion. Very good to get your death design up here. I would say it would probably be better to use Gluttony here so that you get that on cooldown. That would just mean you have to do double Executioner. Sorry, a double Guillotine. But then you know, you won't be in the awkward position of, if you see here, go Arcane Circle, Soul Scythe, and then you do the OGZD, GZD, and then you're like, oh, but Plentiful Harvest isn't ready yet. If you had done Gluttony and then two Guillotines, you would have been able to use Plentiful Harvest when it came up. Other than that, that seemed pretty solid. But as you can see here, you basically didn't get to use Gluttony at all. It's just sitting there, awkwardly. And like, another problem on the initial pull of Reaper is that it can be difficult to actually get everything out the door, because you have 2 Soul Slice charges on top. Like, you also have that, and you have too many resources. Like, you have a lot to work through right now. But the reason why the Gluttony part was a little bit important is because due to the length of a pull and the length of the next pull, you not getting a Gluttony on the previous pull basically means that you lost a full use of Gluttony. Almost certainly. For the whole duty, just gone. Which is I mean, it's not a huge amount, but it might add up. So that would be something that I would keep in mind. Make sure on the initial pull that your first soul thingy becomes a Gluttony. It of course leaves other problems as well, because maybe you wouldn't have been able to use Perfectio in time. And that can happen. Sometimes you have a big AoE pull and you finish it with missing something. Like you didn't get to spend it fully. I guess that works. So a few random tips here. Ham says the Perfectio has a long enough timer to at least give you a chance to use it. That is also true. If the first pull had ended as Perfectio got readied, you would probably be able to like sprint over to the next pack and then either just send it on the first 3 mobs or use it exactly as you're running up to the second pack. Like, depending on the timer, you could do that. What's the button pressing during Enshroud? I usually don't comment on that because controller players often have like a lot of controller players. I feel like they're like little stressed over what tab, like what section of buttons they need to have open, and I don't know why. So I'm not like I'm just assuming like, are you doing it correctly? And I'm not gonna comment on whether that is correct. I'm gonna focus on whether they press the buttons on time, and that is also what we're going to talk about right now. You could just use Enshroud right now. Also, just gonna, let's see, 232. You forgot to use Soulso. You could have used Soulso here, and you could also have included that in this first big pull here. And then you could use Soulso here. And you could use Soulso here. And that's important because Harvest Moon does a lot of AoE damage, and you could have used Soulso right here instead of Harp. Also, it's safe to step forward now, I'm pretty sure. You just get out of hiding and go now. The snapshot has already happened. And you could have used Enshroud as you stepped out. And you might have been able to get most of it out, so you could use Communio while you were out of range. And then you could have used Plentiful Harvest and or Harvest Moon. You could save the second Harvest. You could save the Harvest Moon for the next time you're forced out. And like a lot of things on this specific fight, because it sort of forces you out of melee range quite frequently. Like here, you would have been able to use the Harvest Moon instead of one of the harps. There's nothing wrong with being a little extra cautious with because of how lethal it is if you get hit by the Bedeviling Light. I'm just mostly pointing out when you should be able to go forward. So you do have a Soul Slice, you have seen it. Good. I'm not really... there are points here where like your GCD is hanging for a bit. Which is a... Like, I mean, I assume that that's a, you know, a mistake that I don't have to point out. Like, if your GCD is sitting there, then, like, that could be anything. That could be a hop. That could be a slice. Mizunagi says, in Shroud button pressing look fine, although I wouldn't have them on the double tap L2 R2 hotbars. Yeah, I could see that. But again, I don't actually know very much about how to play on controller, so I'm focusing more on the like that. As you may know, when I give advice, I'm mainly focused on, can you see your cooldowns? Can you see your cooldowns at all times? And then I will just judge whether you did the rotation correctly. And then the rest doesn't matter. But there are definitely cases where... where the reason you can't do a thing is because you made a poor choice with your keybinds. I do believe that is correct, Ham, that holding Perfectio for a ranged option is not bad. I'll say, Sally, hope you're doing well. Darn it, YouTube, what are you doing? Can you believe this? Hey Jack, hope you're doing well. So again, a key thing that I will highlight for you, Agent Monica, is that every time that you're not in combat, it's also, and then every fight, you harvest moon somewhere. You can forget it. I also sometimes forget it. I don't play Reaper that much, in my defense, but every time a fight finishes, you can use Soulso to get a free Harvest Moon. And Harvest Moon does good damage, especially on AoE. So that is something worth reminding yourself. A way you could do this... A way you could do this... Let me just... a way you could do this is here. Grab a hotbar like this one. So this would be like have something like this. You have to go into the settings and set it so that unused buttons are invisible, right? Which is something you can set. And then go here. See. That. Actually, you don't even need that. You actually just need this. And then we switch to Reaper. Whoop. like, you can do a lot with it. Like, obviously you'd have to hide these, but the trick here is that if you lock your buttons here and you're on controller, so this wouldn't be a problem, you just have this highlighted on your screen, and it will basically remind you about Solso. I wouldn't recommend having something like that all the time, but it could help you to remember it. You might also end up being reliant on it to actually remembering it if you do get used to doing this. But this is a way that you could help yourself to learn it. On a random... Wait, what? On a random unrelated note, I've just noticed that the Discord server is going to lose a boost, and we're going to drop and lose some things, I think. So if anyone has one in the chamber, or the Discord server could use your help. Can you hide hotbars in combat? I don't think you can set it so that a hotbar automatically hides while you're in combat. But that would be really convenient if you could. Oof. Yeah, that mechanic is still a little overwhelming for me too. And says you could bind switching hot layout to a keybind using a macro to do something like that. Yeah, but then you'd have to remember to turn on the reminder. And that seems kind of like counterproductive, doesn't it? Another thing you could also do could be to try and set it up so that when you click Solso, it switches between the two, like with a macro. But then you would also have the problem that, like, if you're mashing it, it like flips unnecessarily. That might not be it either. Remember to press your Solso reminder macro when you leave combat. Ajamanka says, I think it's on the last boss there is a moment where I panic and accidentally pop food buff while trying to do something else. Maybe use arm's length or something, I don't know. Oh no! What do I do? I don't know. It didn't solve anything. Is there a way to turn off job gauges in city areas and non-combat zones? I don't think so. But you could, again, make a macro that switches to another HUD layout that that wouldn't have those gauges. You just hide them. You could do that, but you'd have to manually do it. At least as far as I remember. I don't know if you're in the chat right now, Melissa, but thank you very much. That was awesome. Melissa coming in with the clutch boost. 19 Lee and Rakar. Hope you're doing well. Rakar. A 60 stream streak, Teen Lee. That's crazy. Rakar says, I'm not sure if Monica has been going for them often. I've been tapping back and forth, but active use of True North and hitting positionals too. Yeah, With Reaper, I don't really pay as much attention to that. But that is something that you could do, Agent Monica, is keeping track of the Gibbet and Gallows positionals. And also remember that True North is your friend and is particularly OP for that on Reaper. Because, like, when you do Gluttony, you could just double weave Gluttony True North, and then it's just free. I'm also not super consistent on it, Agent Monica, but I also don't play melee DPS that as often as certain other roles. So, like, that's a thing to learn. But yeah, especially the Soul So bit, I think, would help you a lot. And it's also something that is a more, like, Reaper-specific thing to learn, whereas the positionals bit is like melee 101. $560 versus $620 for every single Gibbet or Gallows is incredible, considering how often you use them. Yeah, that's true. I'm pretty sure that Viper also gets, like, is it 60 potency for their positionals? Or is it 40? The massive numbers. How's Ashak? Hope you're doing well. I can't remember if I already got you earlier. Yeah, I get that, Zaf. I feel like there's like that the list of these kinds of actions are actually quite long. Invulns, knockback immunities, True North. Like there is something funny to that, because I'm pretty sure True North wasn't a thing in Heavensward. Then Stormblood added roll actions, and then you had it. And then they've just boosted True North in, like, how available it is, and they have in the other end reduced how frequent positionals are, which gradually has made it so that True North nowadays is extremely prevalent. Like, I believe True North has let's see, yeah, it's like 23% uptime, and then you get an extra one, you know, just an extra one for the road. If you want to have 20 seconds in a chain. Whereas back in the day, I'm pretty sure it lasted 15 seconds and had like a 2 or 3 minute cooldown. And back then, the quantity of positionals was much larger, which meant two things. The first one is that True North was more impactful because you had more positionals you wanted to land, but also two, that it was a lot easier to get a lot of positionals in by just mindlessly pressing True North. Like on Monk, you'd have like every GCD is a positional, so you click True North and then you just get like 8 positionals auto completed. Are there any melee DPS in a bad spot right now, or are they all pretty decent? Don't see many monks these days. Monk is actually possibly the best melee DPS right now, but all of the melee DPS are pretty decent. Even Reaper is fine. The biggest problem Reaper has in terms of representation is that it doesn't do anything particularly special relative to the other DPS, so it just doesn't have as much representation. It's also kind of jank compared to some of the other, like more jank than some of the other melee DPS, which makes it less popular as a result. So it isn't bad. It's just not popular. Avis, hope you're doing well. Stuff says, which is funny because it was the easy melee in Endwalker. That is funny, but I do think that the problem there is that then they added Viper, which is even easier. If they removed Viper, I'm pretty... actually, they added Viper, which is easier than Reaper, and then I would also argue, in some respects, that Monk was made way simpler. But I do think that it is possible that Reaper would still win as the easiest melee if Viper wasn't there. But that's basically the problem, is that every single thing that Reaper is, like, very good at, a different melee DPS is better at doing that. With the express exception, I believe, being that Reaper, among all the melees, has the greatest capacity to stockpile damage by stockpiling gauge stuff, which can be useful in a fight where you can like slow down damage in one phase and then like send it on another phase for a gain, which is something that can happen in ultimates. But that basically means that Reaper is mid for basically everything except ultimates. And, you know, that's good, but a rather specific thing to excel at. Aren't Viper and Reaper in the same boat playstyle or damage-wise? I would say that that they are relatively close to each other. Viper is hurt more by downtime than Reaper, but Reaper is weaker to downtime than Viper. So basically, and the reason for that is that when there's downtime, Viper is generating nothing. Aside from a Serpent's Ire, maybe. When there's downtime, Reaper's cooldowns on Gluttony and Soul Slice are still ticking. And Arcane Circle. Which means that they can recover a little bit better. The problem is that because of Reaper's weird gauge negativity thing, the downtime that does hurt them hurts them more than Viper. Depending on how much, like, health, quote-unquote, your rotation has in terms of being able to take a hit in that sense. Grimmy says, I might be silly, but I kind of see both as sustained damage. I have a very, very unfortunate truth to dank on you, Grimmisaurus. If you actually take all the damage that a Viper does over the course of a fight, I believe around 50% of the damage a Viper does is reawaken. Like the whole thing. I don't think that passes as a sustained DPS. If I'm gonna be perfectly honest. Anyway, Agent Monica, I think you still did very all right. There were some things that probably could be done better, as I suggested. The key thing is Soulso is a lot of free damage left on the table, and it's a very quote-unquote easily actionable improvement in that all you have to do is remember to press Soulso when you're not in combat, and then just use Harvest Moon at some point. In an AoE pull, the best time is, you know, pretty early when everything is alive. On a boss, if there's any chance that there will be, you know, situations where you need additional ranged options, using it there is solid. If there's ads coming in on the boss, that's rare. That would be a good time to do it. Otherwise, just send it at some point. Like, it's basically a better filler GCD. Like, straight up just a better filler GCD. So you can just do that. And then the other thing that was mentioned is use True North more. Focus a little bit better on positionals when those things come up. If you're having trouble with it because you can't remember which one is which, like, each person has their own system, and I don't have a good idea to help you with that. But try to find a system to remember which one is which. For instance, you could... I can't remember which one is which based on the icons, honestly. But it does seem like you have a similar system to me. This one, which is more central, on your buttons is the rear, and this one who's more to the side is flank. That works. Say much, Skipper. Hope you're doing well. And enjoy your nap, Rakar. Rakar! But those would be the things that stand out to me. The thing is, Sully, they could have done that by just making it so you can't pool them. We could check Evis's Criterion boss. We did try this one on stream. I do think it's funny to see how much damage you end up doing to the boss before they even get to do anything. Like, look, already a sixth of their health is gone and they haven't even done anything yet. Now they do something. Nearly a fifth of the boss is dead. First mechanic that actually requires you to move in a certain way is happening. Then he says, I don't really get why the HP is listed as a percentage instead of a full number. Yeah. That one is definitely something to talk about. Ooh. Red Mage down! Exodi says HP and damage values are so high at this point it's kind of hard to comprehend, especially in the heat of battle. Yeah, but sometimes it can be a lot easier to tell how far you were if you can see the actual health number of the enemy instead of just a percentage. It's also worth mentioning, Exodi, that it's not like they changed from showing the exact number to percentage because the numbers became too big. They just never told you. Can't remember if it was Endwalker or Dawntrail where they added a decimal point to the percentage. And we're over halfway. I feel like I remember us seeing this mechanic, but we were basically... We had somehow zombied us this far out that like there was no way we were gonna do it. Ooh. All I remember is that I put my square in, like, in between. So we got, like, a checkerboard pattern. So there was nothing we could do. Ah, here's the stretchy tethers. And of course, in the Criterion version, they don't give you the marker to show you how far they need to be stretched. And the 3 baits, so that you can't just go into the position immediately. Double kill! Well, there's only 2% left. This might be fine. Nice. So the by the way, well done. And also an interesting showcase on what kind of helper tools you can get if you want. So on the I don't understand why they don't just show the exact number instead of a percentage. It's quite interesting. And given that I already early in the stream opened the Pandora's box that is, well, let's see what World of Warcraft has. Pretty interesting. Back in the day, you needed add-ons to be told how much health an enemy had. I am pretty sure that they just tell you in the game now at, like, baseline, if you want to know. That's not to say that that's a good argument for why 14 should have it, but I do think that it is another aspect of a lot of boss fights in 14 rely on not telling you information as part of the challenge. And what gets really interesting is that I believe part of the argument for why WoW just has a baseline is because if you don't have it baseline, then people will just use a tool to get it anyway. Like, you don't get to hide that information, pretty much. Shaman says, do Vipers compete with Samurais? Would having both be redundant? Not necessarily. 2 of the same job in a hard content party would reduce the pace at which a limit break gauge fills. So you wouldn't want that. But 2 different jobs that fill the same kind of role? You can do that if you want to. Go for it. It might not be optimal, like it might not be the most optimal party composition to have Samurai and Viper. It also might be. It depends on a lot of things. The logic of it might not be is that if you're like trying to optimize like to an extreme degree, it might be better to have like a Dragoon that can give the Samurai, for instance, Battle Litany, rather than having Viper and Samurai. And you would also have a dancer giving the samurai devilment, and you like, and so on and so forth. And as Kat says, what you really need to care about is having, like, in a hard content party, have different jobs, but ultimately for the DPS you want one ranged, one cast, and one melee. And by ranged we mean dancer, machinist, or bard. And then you can have one of your choosing. Ranged physical typically rank a little lower on the, like, damage performance than other roles, so you might prefer having an extra melee or an extra caster, but this usually matters less and less as a raid tier goes on. The reason why you want one of each of these things is because of the party bonus here. Gives you 1% on this one per, like, category represented. Yeah, exactly, because that was also what I was thinking about, is that look at how much information is given. Like, there's a note saying exactly how far away Ivis is from the target. That would be really handy sometimes, I'll have you know. There is a timer with a decimal point on when adder skulls are given. That would be nice to have. Why can't we have that? Why does it have to be a gauge that fills? And you can see literally how much health the boss has. Why can't we have that? Why isn't it an option? Like, those kind of things, where it's just like, why not? And in a game like WoW, where you're allowed to customize quite heavily, something like exact amount of distance from your target is something that, if you, like, legitimately, if I opened character configuration and found under target a way to, like, toggle that, or just randomly, like, one day open the HUD layout and found, like, a thing you could say make visible that says distance from target, I feel like 90% of players, or even more potentially, would be like, why? And it probably does, and it probably also does, admittedly, it doesn't look super elegant either. But if you can just add it as, like, an add-on that you made yourself, like, I made this, then it doesn't matter if it looks elegant. It doesn't matter if it looks good. It serves a purpose, and it does exactly that, and nothing more. And that's good enough. But because it's not, like, officially not allowed, remember, guys, Fight Club rules. Importantly, Ivis's name is not visible in the footage. A character name. It makes it a little complicated, right? As I definitely had range display in WoW. I didn't, but I pretty much only played melees. With very, very few exceptions. That usually didn't come up. Also, that said, and in addition, what we were watching was a replay. A duty recorder replay. In a duty that you can't record with a duty recorder. Oh, Shaman, that one is a reference to Fight Club. Just like we're making a reference to Fight Club. Ilana says, although it was only giving you a range of distance like 10 to 15, for example. When did you use this add-on, Ilana? Was it after Legion? Was it after Legion? From Cataclysms of BFA, did it only show yard ranges like that in Cataclysm? Or did it show the exact number in Cataclysm? And welcome back to the Cult of the Pig Shaman. Thank you so much for the support. It was already like that in Kata? Okay. The reason why I mentioned it is because I specifically remember in Legion that due to some specific overpowered options for DBM, Blizzard nerfed the player's capacity to determine exact distances from things sometimes, especially other players. Which meant that where before you had like a radar showing exactly where players were relative to you for specific mechanics, after that change, they just had a list saying whether you were or were not within a certain distance. And what's really funny about that is that the way that trick worked was that they had made it so that add-ons couldn't see where other players were. Like it couldn't track coordinates of other players anymore to prevent that level of optimization. But people quickly found out that, well, what you can check is whether you're within distance to trade with someone, which I think was like 8 yards. So they could make a tracker that checked whether you were or were not within 8 yards of someone else and just post a list. Good luck, Zaf. But yeah, there are definitely some super simple tools for 14 that are like something that is actually impressive that they're not in the game. I'm also impressed that in the year 2026, that this is the information you give when you point over the thing that presumably would give you your ping. I don't know what this is like. I don't know what this is supposed to tell me. Looks important. Can I have it in the shape of latency? Is Gassel here? All that meter does is tell me if I'm disconnecting, which many other things already tell me. Oh yeah, awesome. Guys, we have a tracker that might tell you that you're disconnecting. It's like if the game just said, as you're already pokeballing, or worse, as you get kicked out to the main screen, the game goes, you're losing connection to the server. I think it's already lost, man. But thanks. Yeah, the common ways that you can check your actual ping is to use something like command prompt to ping the server directly, or you can use resource manager to check your latency there. But I think even that isn't perfect. Yes, whenever I see modded G poses online, I realize that people have no idea how a shoulder works. I could imagine. Shaman says, what would you say is the best indicator that you're playing your job proficiently enough? That's complicated. There's a lot of factors. And there's almost always room for more improvement. Being able to beat a Stone Sky Sea dummy can be impressive, but also could not. Because each job has a differently scaled dummy based on what the developers think you should be doing. What that typically means is that jobs that are more dependent on their party to do the damage tend to have a lot more lenient dummies. Whereas jobs that are more selfish tend to have stricter dummies, and the less mobile the job is perceived to be by the developers, the more likely it is that it'll have an even tighter one, with the logical reasoning for that being, let's assume that whatever DPS you do on this striking dummy is as much as you can do when you're not being distracted by boss mechanics. Boss mechanics are going to cause you to lose damage because you have to move. So maybe you only need 80 or 90% of the damage you can, like that the striking dummy expects of you. But because the damage expectation of the striking dummy is so high, the only way that you can beat it is with a little bit of luck. And this can get quite extreme. I did, like, in the last raid tier when I was maining Black Mage, I was sometimes practicing on the M8S striking dummy, and like I could do the exact same thing 10 times in a row. And one time I would finish with like 20 seconds to spare, and another one I wouldn't make it at all. And the difference was luck. Part of it was also that because of the luck, it could mean that enough crits meant that I would finish at the end of an Astral Fire state. Whereas if I didn't have that crit luck, then I was basically like, well, the only option I have is cast Blizzard 3, Blizzard 4, Paradox, back into fire again. And that already adds like a lot of time. Whereas if you can kill it before that, all of that reset up isn't necessary. You don't have to reload your gun. And suddenly the difference is massive. That's one thing. Being high on enmity is also a dangerous one, because some jobs happen to generate extra enmity from non-damage related sources. And also, you know, you can't use that one as a tank. Just a random example. Just to give an example, Pictomancer technically generates extra enmity every time they use Star Prism because it heals everyone. The extra enmity isn't like a colossal amount, but it does mean that Pictomancer has like a fake enmity amount that doesn't translate to damage. Which is why it is important every time we talk about this that yes, enmity can be used as like a vague reference point for whether you're doing a lot or not very much damage, but it's not accurate enough that you can rely on it consistently. You usually, does all healing generate enmity? Healing over time doesn't. And Embrace and Cardia also doesn't. And anything similar to Embrace, Cardia, or Healing Over Time doesn't. Which, for instance, means that Bloodwetting doesn't generate, and Bloodbath doesn't generate, because they are pseudo Healing Over Time. Or like they're basically closer to healing over time than direct healing, so they don't count, so they don't generate any enmity. I think I'm actually not sure whether Life Surge would. What about Naima? That one is a heal, but the damage the healing from Cardia provided by Naima is Cardia, and Cardia doesn't provide any enmity. How's it, Igashi? Hope you're doing well. And yeah, that is probably a better point to focus on, Kat, is... Do you know what... actually, a way that you would be able to be more clear about how good you are at your job, Shaman... could, for instance, be if you could log a fight, which Fight Club, all that, you could use Ziv analysis to check what you're doing, and that would be able to check if you're doing like what should be done. The thing is, not even that is consistent, because some fights might have downtime, or some fights might just mean that it is actually not optimal to use everything. So one level of knowing that you are good at the job you're playing is being able to determine in such an analysis what you did wrong, what was right, what things that this analysis tool thinks is wrong, and you being able to explain why it isn't wrong. And, you know, be correct when you make that explanation. It is complicated, Shaman, but let's just say that if you know what you need to do on your rotation, you might not need a DPS meter to know whether you're doing it right. But, I mean, that skill itself requires a lot of practice to get. Right? Like, I'm just saying, me being able to, in the heat of battle, notice that Viper over there isn't doing the rotation correctly because I can hear the sound of their AoE filler combo, and this is a single target fight. That doesn't come from just practicing Viper a lot, specifically. But I have done that. I can usually tell on physical jobs with some accuracy what action they're using by looking at their animations. But that's not something that is particularly useful, necessarily. But it might be useful. Hey Mistel, hope you're doing well. It says, is Stone Sky Sea Dummy reliant on food and pots if you have current gear and are on current content? I mean, I don't think so. But considering, as we're talking about, that you could beat it or not beat it, dependent on whether you had whether on crit lock, it's really hard to tell. Anyway, I'll be right back, and then I think we'll check some more clips. In the meantime, manatee restored. Alright, I am back. Silly says they've said as much that they're not supposed to be in Q&As before, and I doubt it's changed. You see, the thing is, what makes it really complicated here is that given the kind of vague requirements of the striking dummies, I'm not saying that there's evidence of this, and I'm not saying whether it is or is not, but I will say, based on the kind of jank I have seen in 14, that there is a possibility that for instance, that a set of striking dummies, like Stone Sky Sea dummies, have been made with the person who was responsible for setting the health amounts forgot that they shouldn't be. Or that they just decided to count it there. I'm assuming if they said no, it's not supposed to be, then it is like that. But it wouldn't surprise me if there was a generation of striking dummies that just were, because they forgot that one time and was like, whatever. Also, speaking of Stone Sky Sea, as Metricon says, consistency is not exactly a core 14 value. Indeed, exactly. That's basically what I mean. That 14 is consistent enough about being inconsistent that I wouldn't put it past the developers to forget something like that. Just oops. And I'm just saying that it's consistent enough that these kind of weird random things happen that I'm like not surprised when it happens that they overlook something. But also, speaking of Stone Sky Sea, really random thing is that hypothetically, if they meant for the test to be, you know, actually a real test, and they meant for potions and food buffs and such to not be used in them, I do find it interesting that you can use them in them. However, Stone Sky Sea also doubles as a way to test certain things as a player. So them being kind of fast and loose with what you can and cannot do with Stone Sky Sea makes sense. What I mean by that is, if they meant for you to not use food buffs or potions or anything, then they could have maybe made it so that you can't during that test. They haven't. An additional thing that is probably not meant to be part of the test is your Chocobo companion, which you can bring for a Stone Sky Sea test if you want to. And an additional thing you can do is that certain buffs do not get reset when you enter Stone Sky Sea. Some of you may have seen, so back when Dawntrail was relatively new, I demonstrated a trick that was the trick was basically blocked off by a buff duration being shortened a bit, but I showed it off for historical reasons as well. And I made the setup by abusing the way that Stone Sky Sea works. You may have heard of the term primal ruination smuggling. Essentially, Warrior doesn't really have a 2-minute burst in the same sense that other jobs do. They kinda do, in that I believe through natural causes, Infuriate lands on roughly 1 on the odd, 2 in the even minute on a full uptime, just through the way that it works, with the cooldown reduction on Fill Cleave and things like that. So they technically do have a 2-minute burst, but because they don't have a damage boost for their odd minute burst, they don't have any particular motivation to use their big damage buttons in the odd minute if they were available in the even minute. Hypothetically. At launch of Dawntrail, when you used Inner Release, you had 30 seconds to use Primal Rend, you still do, and then when you used Primal Rend, you had an additional 30 seconds to use Primal Ruination. So if, for instance, the even minute burst that was coming up was one that you intended to use a gem draft on, you know, a buff potion, you could, on the odd minute, do your Inner Release, 3 Fill Cleaves, Primal Wrath, and then just not use Primal Rend. And then when Primal Rend hit, you know, around 1 or 2 or maybe 3 seconds before it was running out, you click it, and then you have an additional 30 seconds. And then when there's like 10 seconds until 10, 8, 7 seconds, something like that, until Inner Release is ready, you hit the buff potion, send the Primal Ruination, and then you go into your burst. And then that Primal Ruination just also gets to have buffs. Well, specifically the potion buff. This setup basically required that you could carry Primal Ruination a full minute, roughly. And its duration being reduced by exactly 10 seconds means that it's not really possible now. Not really. But the way that I set up the demonstration, because I got around to making the video when it already had been fixed, is that I went into Stone Sky Sea, attacked the striking dummy, hit Inner Release, and immediately left. And just stood there waiting to fail the trial, and just stood there, and then like the moment it failed, talked with the NPC, had them send me in again, and then I would just Primal Rend, start recording. Now I have it! And Inner Release, because Inner Release's cooldown is reset, but Primal Rend ready isn't cancelled. Sally says, I know they mentioned years ago that pots and food were considered optional for Savage, according to the devs, which, if still true, means players have likely been screwing up jobs for a while now. I would say if food and pots are considered optional for Savage, then I feel like this number is false. Like, just straight up incorrect. Because I'm pretty sure that like, especially when you get to here, that plus no food buffs plus no burst potions is not happening. It was mentioned in Heaven's Ward. Yeah, okay. Should probably have a second round with asking that one. Anyway, what I find really interesting about this is, so I have said this before, and this mainly comes up for me in the context of job guides, but it could come up in other contexts for other things, and if we had more options, it would be great. It would be nice if Stone Sky Sea was more of like a test lab where you could like toggle things and set your level to whatever you want so you can demonstrate things or test things. That would be nice. And being allowed to do that would also make it pretty easy to do whatever you want without like being like, oh, well, we have to add like a level 50 sync, a level 40 sync, a level 30 sync or something, which, by the way, we don't have. The reason I thought about this is because in Guild Wars 2, ding, another MMO mentioned, I believe there is a room that you can access. That in that room you can talk with an NPC and just tell it to spawn a certain number of like striking dummies, essentially. And you could also talk with that NPC and just say, give me permanent alacrity, which is a very important buff in that game. The logic being that in a real raid encounter, you would have someone providing that buff for you. So you essentially just fake having a whole raid team behind you, buffing you, by just having this NPC give you every single buff that you were supposed to have. And it would be nice to have something like that in 14, wouldn't it? Jamin says, the conspiracy theory, the harder dummies are devs nudging people away from overly popular jobs by making them think they suck when it doesn't break. Now, that would work a lot better if it wasn't already like a generally accepted fact that Stone Sky Sea is not optimal as a way to test whether you know your job. It is a way, it's a starting point, and it's better than nothing, but it is not perfect. Anyway, and yeah, that too, Miss. I mean, if they had something like that, they could have just had it so that like there's a test room potion you could activate, or test room food where you could just choose stats based on some food. Like, there's a lot of things you could do if you made a test room. So, Ace Ionic Blast, hope you're doing well. Says, what about using Stone Sky Sea to see if you can meet DPS checks? Basically, the reason why Stone Sky Sea doesn't work very well for that, Ionic Blast, is because, to reiterate what I said a little bit earlier, the way they balance jobs, for DPS checks like that, rather for these dummies is that jobs that are more mobile and more party dependent, so for instance Dancer, have really, really easy striking dummies. To compensate for the fact that, well, whatever damage you can do here, you can probably also do in a real fight because you're fully mobile, you're a Dancer. And also a lot of your damage probably would be by buffing everyone else. Meanwhile, a selfish job that is less mobile, for instance Black Mage, usually have overtuned striking dummies to compensate for the fact that you probably won't have full perfect uptime as a caster on a fight like that. Except you usually do. If you're like meeting the DPS check on that boss, you probably do. So it makes no difference. So basically what I'm saying is, while the Stone Sky Sea dummies are sort of meant to test whether you can meet the DPS check of a fight, they're not perfect. And they might not tell you anything. They might also tell you a lot of things, but they might not tell you anything. But they could be used for that. They're better than nothing. And they're also a decent way to test against yourself, because it's a little bit like a time trial, right? Can you beat the dummy? Can you beat the dummy faster? But then there's crit variance, so maybe the reason why you could beat the dummy the first time was because you were lucky, and the reason why you can't the second time is because you're unlucky. So it does do something, but it's not perfect. And there's also the part that, you know, you might not actually be able to meet the DPS check when it comes to the real mechanics in the fight. So it's a complicated conversation is what I'm trying to get at. Hey, sarcastically logical, hope you're doing well. Right. You see here. I think what we will do is that we will do a couple more clips. I both have some Expedition 33 stuff from Shaq and some Hades stuff from Nox. And I think we'll do those last because one of them, some people might escape because they don't want spoilers. I will say that if you've been following my streams, Shaq has made sure to not do something that I haven't already done, or at least not posted anything. So that should be safe. And some people just don't care for Hades. So, you know, chance for them to just go, well, I'm done. But aside from that, I do have clips from in 14 from Shaq, Milo, Ham, Audrey, Zanko, and Gazel. If any one of them are here, in addition to Shaq is sitting right there, do let me know. Yeah, I do agree with that, Shaman. It's certainly not easy to see if you're improving. Let me just check something real quick. That is really funny. So, some of you may know that I've been having this weird problem where sometimes on stream I'll be doing something and then like my overlay freezes or janks up. Apparently it seems to have something to do with how much performance is needed from, I think it is the GPU. I think. And what makes it really interesting is that when the overlay janks up, there are certain other things that also jank up. Notably, my toolbar, you know, like the bottom of your screen on Windows, freezes. I guess to like save energy or something? I'm not sure. But what I can see, but what is interesting also is that it only freezes when 14 is in focus. And when I'm right here, I click on my overlay thingy and then back to 14. When I click on the overlay, it highlights, oh, you have the overlay in focus. I click to 14 and the toolbar is frozen on, well, you still have the overlay in focus because it froze the moment I clicked on 14. It seems like it like moves in bursts because after a little bit it fixes itself, so it's just really laggy. But what's really funny is that when everyone was here, I think a couple people left, when everyone was here, I did this, saw it was frozen, and then like turned my camera around to hide some of those wings, zoomed in, and then it unfroze. So apparently I'm at like, I'm not sure what's going on here, but apparently I'm like pushing the PC exactly to the limit where it is just barely causing problems. Yeah, just streaming things, exactly. I'm pretty sure that that the problem is also mainly present when I'm streaming and recording simultaneously. Which is to say, this problem came up in Mistwake on the Mentor Roulette set the other day. And the moment I stopped recording that particular duty, it stopped goofing up. Jet says I think it does depend on your GPU being 99 or 100%. Now you'll be really interested to see that my GPU is at 80%. Peaks at 80%. Right? That's why I'm so confused, because I would understand it if it was, you know, I didn't have more computer power, but I do. And for some reason, it just goes, oh, we have to hold it. Stop the presses. Anyway, back to the important stuff. It does seem like Task Manager doesn't report the GPU usage correctly, but still is concerning amount of usage. Is there a way I can check it that isn't the Task Manager right now? Can it be process priority with some of the encoding presets? I don't know. Where would I check that? I'm pretty sure I've turned off the NVIDIA overlay, so I don't think I can check that one. Oh, well, thanks guys. I think I have the answer. I moved it to another monitor because I was like, I don't actually know if there's some sort of private information there. Check this out, guys. We have an answer. And the fact that it like dips to 89% for a moment also explains why sometimes it catches up again. Well, I'm very glad that we did this exploration. Thank you all for coming to Kai's Computer Problems episode, I don't know, 150? And by the way, guys, it is a 4090. And for anyone wondering how in the world 14 can take that much to run, it's running in 4K at 120 FPS. I've basically gone as fast as I possibly could. Or as hard as I possibly could. And then I'm like, why isn't it working, guys? That's weird. I have actually reduced some graphics settings to help it. A little bit. But this explains a lot. The reason why I've been confused is because I specifically turned off the NVIDIA overlay because I have a tendency to like open it by accident. Sonic Blasters, I'm at 1440 at 80 FPS with a 3080. Yeah, my backup PC has a 3080. And it like since Dawntrail, let's just say it has had some trouble playing 4K. I believe it can technically run it at like 80 FPS as well. But that's not with maximum settings. I will probably have to take a look at this. Thank you all very much. Thank you so much. Now I finally have a path. Now I understand why things are breaking. Because before I was just like, I don't understand why things are breaking. My PC says it's fine. And then suddenly it isn't fine. But because the task manager's lying, which honestly I should have known. Doing hunts must break your PC? No. But I imagine that the overlay would die. And I would not run 120 FPS. But yeah, I will have to look at reducing some graphics settings. But this probably also explains... I think I know what the problem is, guys. I'm pretty sure I know what the problem is. So... I've been streaming on this setup and like with these graphics settings for a while, right? A while. And I then did some streaming settings changes, which I believe increased the load on the GPU. And this was meant to help with the how good it looks at lower bit rates. A fellow Dane, I see, Jet. Yeah, it's not great, but it's what we have. Velkommen to Windows 11, aka Skrull, aka Trash. It's not good. But yeah, then I have effectively increased the load on the GPU and not changed anything anywhere else, and not noticed that it has caused problems. But that is fantastic. That explains a lot. And that also explains why I should have been looking whenever I've been worried. So thank you, everyone. Now, clips. Shaq, you're here, at least. I feel like everyone else that posted clips aren't here. So should we check out your M10S clear? Thank you so much, guys. I'm genuinely, I've been dealing with this worry, like, well, I don't understand what's happening with my PC for weeks, man. And it was that easy. Especially because I opened the NVIDIA app, and when you mentioned that it could be in the NVIDIA app, it was like the performance button just came into existence. I never noticed it before. It was just invisible. And you're like, maybe it's in the NVIDIA app. Boom, there it is. Oop, there it is. I don't think it's a cursed M10S clear. It's just Shaq's M10S clear, which is also my M10S clear. It's our first. So stuff has happened, but this is still Viper POV, and hey, we also reviewed other bosses from Shaq's POV, so maybe there's something to learn. And just quick one before the fight starts. When we checked the M9S, we had my POV, Milo's POV, who is the scholar, and Shaq's POV simultaneously, which admittedly took a lot of focus away from Shaq, because we're a lot more focused on the general stuff. Set up a thread in the Discord specifically to document Kai's computer problems. Here's a funny story, Mizu. If you want some data to start the log on, I believe one of my like Christmas special streams included me giving the entire story of my Intel CPUs, plural, from start to finish. Oh my god, that's a cursed timing. I have to check. I have to run something back to make sure. What? Congratulations, Sonic Blast. I'm going to be like super like nitpicky to make sure that I didn't miss anything. I don't think it's that, but I'm just gonna point it out like step by step. GCD clipping. And then it happens here. So here's my suggestion. If this always happens, this costs you like, I think, half a second or more. My suggestion, and I don't know if this is optimal, but it is a thing you could do, and I'm right there, and I did something like this. Because I have the same problem if I don't think about it. If I just run classic Paladin opener, then I run into that problem. And then I have to awkwardly shuffle over to where the boss moved to, and then I lose uptime. Yeah, Selly beat me to it. So what you do is you go 1, you go 2, you go 3, and it doesn't matter whether you think you can make it or not. You know that Red Hot is leaving before you can finish your 4, and when I mean finish, I mean you go 4 OGCD. And because of the way Viper works, you have to go for OGCD. If the boss leaves during that, then you have to do something else, or you should try something else. So my suggestion is Uncoiled Fury. It's going to be a little bit hard to meter out because like the GCD and Uncoiled Fury, but what is relevant here is that it doesn't matter where Red Hot jumps to. You can do the double weave for Uncoiled Fury and just casually walk over to where he's going. And you should make it. Because he's jumping right here. At this point, you could already move. And at this point, I would say about you see, about a quarter of this has passed, which is like half a second. And I believe Uncoiled Fury is a full 3 seconds. So you would have a full GZD, like a full old school, longer than a Viper GZD time to just casually potato waddle over to where Red Hot is. And you can make it because I can make it. And I'm waddling as the Paladin. So you just Uncoiled Fury, double OGCD as you just run over where he is. And then you finish off. It might mean that Ouroboros misses buffs. That's what I'm not sure about. And then, as we continue this review, I appreciate it. Although, let me just see here. Wait. You don't have... let me just see here. I thought you had a marker. Oh, I have the marker. I'm like, I would just watch myself because I know that I'm like ridiculously perfectionistic about this particular section when I don't. So, you don't have to run all the way to stop 3. What I would do is... So your GZD is not going to be ready before he moves. So what I would do... Oh man, I jumped pretty far back. What I would try, if I were you, is around here. You walk... So my mouse is a little small on the screen. You walk like over here, and I'm intentionally drawing it like a curve. You're walking towards the end destination that is stop 1. But while deliberately dodging the line and like curving away from it in case whoever's there moves. And you just wait for Red Hot over there, do a GZD, and then either, like, you have to figure out how much time you have. You might be able to do 2 GZDs, I'm not sure. But once you're like, okay, I can't sneak any more in now, you do the same thing, curve over to stop 3, do a GZD, stop 2, sorry. And then curve away and ready to catch him on stop 3, and then down to stop 4. And then you run to wherever you need to be. And you should be able to do most of this with melee GZDs. You might need an Uncoiled Fury at maybe from stop 1 to 2, or from 2 to 3, or from 3 to 4. But you should be able to chase him the whole way. It might slow you down a tad bit, I'm not sure. Remember, it's a Paladin with a GZD of 2.5 suggesting ideas for a Viper with a GZD of 2.12. That might make the difference. I have a full clip of coils. Fair enough. I'm still saying that there's no need for you to run over there. You could chase him over here. And you could even do it with just for the auto attacks. In fact, looking at what you're doing here, you could probably chase him over there, do one of your coils, and then chase him over here. And when I mean coils, I mean Hunter's coil or Swiftskin's coil. And then you can just Uncoiled Fury for other stuff, and you just have those, right? So it's just optimization suggestions. You might already be doing this. It's been like a month, I think. More than a month. But I will say, my advice is you can be pretty loose with your position for all that when you're not part of the sequence. when you are part of the sequence, I'm like, I thought you were stop 2 when you ran over immediately, and I would not have faulted you at all for doing it if you were stop 2. This is also a good time to get ready to Uncoil Fury. I think so, Ardell. Naomi says, I'm glad we don't have these tiny cones anymore. Remember, guys, that's thanks to Zip coming up with an idea and choosing to follow through on it. That was him just deciding to just fix it, and then I like give him a mitt to help with it too. He's the reason why we have a longer cone for the bait there is because Zip runs into the fire to force it to happen. I know you know. I'm just saying, like, we should make sure to appreciate when Zip comes up with a good idea, right? I like the duality of Pink Raiders. What duality? Oh, the cat saying I miss them, and Naomi saying no? Okay. So, I don't know how many coils you have to spare, but just a random tip. A random tip. Every time this happens, Uncoiled Fury is a gain. Like, extra good. Extra good. Like, I know Uncoiled Fury is obviously useful on one target, but it's even better when this is happening. I'm mentioning, and I don't know how many you have, because, I mean, I know from my perspective that I'm not capitalizing on that very much myself, because I don't, like, I can't. I straight up just can't. My fight or flight is coming up too late to capitalize on it. Same for the Buster on air. Well, I don't know how consistent Zip is with his positioning, but if you check, I'm basically going to suggest here you could have full melee uptime during Tank Buster. It's a little scary. And I know Naomi is also scared, and I understand. I'm not being like, meh, just don't be. There's nothing to be afraid of. I, the one who will not die if you get overzealous. You can see it's a little difficult to see out of the corner, but you can see Zip is like sort of like I hope he's getting better at this, but he should be standing like I would say. I actually can't remember exactly where I'm standing, but now that I can actually see the size of the AoE thanks to the red one, I might be able to be more consistent. Stand like in this circle, in this donut shape, and then bait it there, And then you can see the explosion. As it really colors in here. You could easily be here. You could easily... You're actually in melee range right now. That's actually insane. But that would be my suggestion. If you need to conserve coils, this is a place where you don't always need them. I do think all I was saying, Naomi, to that was that I wasn't sure how aggressive you keeping uptime. I was not saying you weren't keeping uptime. I didn't mean it like that, at least. I was mostly trying to say... I'm not trying to say that you have to. I'm just saying that you can probably get in. And you are. But that's actually even more useful information for Shaq, because Naomi is keeping uptime because there is no Uncoiled Fury. Shaq might feel more apprehensive towards trying it, because he has this option to fall back on. Feel the burn! The movements in between spots are not always full uptime though. Irrelatable. It's not for me either. Oh, that was pretty clean. Weird angle, but pretty clean. What's even more annoying is even if you have like ranged attacks that keep full uptime, sometimes them like circling around you as they're surfing like glitches out. So even though you're using instant attacks, it goes, well, they're not in front of you. Oh boy. Nice. I just saw it, oh, you just said it. Sarcastically logical says, it seems your stream is good luck, just got the rare fish I was after. Congratulations! Woo! Ooh, that's pretty nice. Ooh, Ouroboros on both of them. That is also very nice. And we have a double dip. Oh boy. Ooh. I see you move towards the mark. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's wrong. See Sip move away. Boom. I'm also having a bit of trouble with the double, but I get it right enough consistently that I at worst get hit by one. Oh no! One of the OGCDs was eaten! No! Wow, our first clear was really like, oops, all bangers here. Like, both of the times it was full party swap. Bruh. There was definitely a sequence there of I need to make sure that the mechanic is done correctly, so the rotation just paused. I would also like to take a moment for Shaq saying I still can't get double right, to be fair. That when Shaq died to the double, he said in the link shell, I really can't get this right. So it's like a little time capsule. Boom! Very nice. Hey, Subdued Radical. Hope you're doing well. I'm not playing. I'm watching. Hope you're doing well, Subdued Radical. The way that this works is that we take a walk and we talk a bit. And I also have some clips to view because, like it originally started with some people like being like, "How? Like, could you help me with getting better?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can. Can I see your footage?" And then the easiest way is, you know, on a stream, you can just show, like, just explain it to you live, right? That's kind of how that started. So we walk to somewhere while we talk, and then we review some clips to learn something new, or teach someone something new, or learn something cool. But I'm not playing. I'm playing, technically. I'm playing standing around the game. I do think it's very interesting because seeing the difference between seeing a clear when you've basically already perfected it all, and seeing a clear where the person is, you know, still figuring out what they can get away with and what they can't, and their mechanics are like, I need to like just focus on this or I will die. So you just see them just not attack. In the clear is pretty interesting. But yeah, anyway, that was a Shaq's POV of our raid team's first M10S clear. And failing finding anyone else to check out, because they're missing. I think we will check the non-14 games clips. So I have a question for you all. Expedition 33 bosses or some Hades 2 gameplay first, and then we do the other one. Anyone have a preference? You see, Nox is pretty solid at Hades 2. And he's been like showing off how the game looks and how it works in a run a little bit at a time. The Expedition 33 video has a giga spoiler. I do believe you have like a major boss, yes. Sarcastically logical says, honestly, I didn't know you did that kind of relook into stuff. Lost my clear time at this point, sadly. I will say that part of it also comes down to like how many clips we have. I sometimes have to like just go, well, I didn't make it to that clip in time. Both because like I just didn't get around to it in time and the person was available so infrequently. So sometimes you don't get around to all of the clips that are posted. And sometimes we do. And you're always welcome to post a clip. As Ardell posted a link to where you can find the room for it. But yeah, basically this kind of stream is straight up just the whole reason, as I've explained before, the reason why we're just walking somewhere and then doing nothing is because the times where I've tried and have a talk stream where we're doing something, that something always takes some of the attention from the talking. So we're doing essentially nothing and just hanging out to emphasize the talking. And yeah, as Jack said, because of various things, a lot of clips and various things, the M10 clip is from over a month ago. But I try my best. It hasn't helped that we had a week with a new variant and all that. Was that also the time? I think I also finally got around to the Heavensward relic weapon speedrun, which was also something that delayed. So it sometimes becomes a little complicated, but I do appreciate the clips, and I do want to respect and take the time to view them, which is also why I ask if people are there before checking their clip. But yeah, off the point that the Expedition 33 stuff is a big spoiler, maybe we should start with the Hades stuff, so that people that don't want to see the Expedition 33 spoilers can flee without missing the other stuff if they want to see the other stuff. And Nox is here, fantastic. Oh right, the Saucer stream as well. The Sauce stream. And that was fun. You know, I remember, didn't they mention that they were going to add more, like, multiplayer stuff to the Gold Saucer? Imagine if they had, like, gotten, like, been told, like, oh, yeah, there was this collaboration stream, and they had to, like, invent things to do together, because there's nothing you can do together in the Gold Saucer, and like, oh, yeah, that's a good point. Imagine. Oh. You customized the thumbnail. And also, as Subdued Radical mentioned, it does indeed help with a like, you know. The YouTube algorithm likes it. Personally, I wish I didn't have to ask for that, but it does really help, and I do very much appreciate it. And some people just don't think about it, and that's the reason, and they're like, oh yeah. So I'm mentioning it. But if you don't want to, that's also okay. It's very much appreciated though. I did not. It just picked that. That is actually pretty solid then. So what this is Nox has been showing us Hades 2, one region at a time.
Hi everyone, it's your boy back at it again with another set of another run through a region of Hades. It's slightly less time for this run because maybe we'll remember more of it this time around. Let's just get into it. We are picking up the third relic. Which this time is going to be Festus, because we are trying to get Hephaestus's gain. Let's see here. There is nothing I really want there, so we're just gonna jump through it.
A tip I would
The
give
third
you...
zone is very different from the previous two, because we're going to spawn into big zones that has multiple rewards.
A suggestion I would give, Nox,
Like
because you
this.
said you're very unfocused, or you're like
Which
a little
means
bit...
we're going to see...
you're getting like a little bit confused on what needs to be said and what not, doesn't need to be said, is what I would do if I were you is... I don't know how much options you do have, but if you could have a separate tool to record your voice and record the gameplay, so that you have two separate files. I don't do this. I'm basically saying like, you don't have to do this. It's just a way that you can like customize this a lot more if you're like uncertain about this. So when you start, you of course would need to have some sort of way to check that like the two recordings are synced. But then you record your voice and you record the gameplay, and then afterwards you use something like DaVinci Resolve, which is free, as far as I understand, to combine it. Then you can also you can remove the voice if you're like, I don't say anything useful here. And you can cut out parts where nothing is happening. And you can add voice lines after the fact to just go, okay, well, in the actual gameplay, I was like, so like you don't have to explain that, but like, you just conclude, I'm not saying anything useful here. I will just add something useful myself. And then you just do a separate recording, add it, boom, jams. Everybody's happy. It's awesome. This kind of stuff is the exact reason why my mentor roulette just has me in a separate track explaining what happened. Is because a lot of the time, if I actually cooked down each mentor roulette duty from the stream to when I said something interesting, then sometimes there's nothing. And sometimes there's a bunch. So, like, that is a way you could do it. And I should also be better about mixing it up a bit. And I just don't.
So magic.
Do as I say, not as I do.
A hex upgrade, as well as Festus.
Video editing tips on walk and talk as well, right, guys?
And that's not the main reward. We'll also find these things, which are mini rewards. Which
Notes would also help, yes.
some
You could
minor
also,
setups
instead of having
in
to
the case
talk over
of
it,
these things.
instead of having to
to
talk over it to explain,
up
you could
this
just
menu.
edit in text blurbs to say what's happening, and then we can figure out whether we need to know.
I will explain it once we open the bigger version. Which looks like this. Alright, so to try and
Free
explain this menu. So, you get, you pick a hex, which gives you a super move, and then you can upgrade that super move using this, which you get pats of stars. Each extra colored node is an extra more powerful version upgrade. With this one is because I have Aphrodite, which as you can see makes it so that I spawn a thing while in my hex, which is pretty nice. But you can only do the special version of the hex once. We're gonna pick that, and then we're gonna try and work towards the purples, which we are probably not gonna get because it's really pretty late in the zones, but you never know. This is a stream you can click to help us find the upgrades or the boons that we want. I screwed that up, it's been a while. Alright. Once we get the gain, hopefully we get the gain. We're highly likely to get it. Yep. And yeah, we got the gain.
Hey!
So, there is 2 different instances of damage mitigation. I believe tough gain is counted before damage mitigation. So it's worse than it could be, but it's still good.
That's yeah. If
we're going
flat
to
reduction
verify
happens
it.
first, that's worse.
Basically, it means that any hit we take, its damage will be first reduced by our active DR, which I believe right now is 35%. So we have 2 sources of it.
And then tough gain?
And it will cut that damage, whatever damage is left.
Will be reduced by 3 or 4.
It will take the damage we take.
That's like me doing
Oh, yeah,
math in the middle of a raid boss or something.
Sorry, I'm unfocused, as usual. So, DR will reduce the damage we are taking. It will then take whatever damage that remains and reduce it by 4. It's flat 4. It cannot reduce damage below 1. As you can see, I'm taking damage checks of 1 right now. And here we want preferably Blitz, but I'm actually gonna count here.
If it is percentage mitigation
Yes,
first, then
we're
the
going to
flat,
take
then it is
Flourish.
optimal, then it's actually good. That is the optimal way to
Special
get
door. Gonna meet Echo.
maximum value. I can explain it
Literal.
afterwards.
Always pleased to see you. Pleased to see you. See you.
That does nothing. This can be good, but let's just pick another boon of Zeus.
Please take care. Take care. Take care. Take care.
We
Boon of
might
Zeus.
as well pick
Boon of
Static
Sauce.
Shock here, because it's a very good boon. And we don't super care about priming. Then we
No.
got more HP.
Shades there. Grow
Like
golden.
this, so we know where to go.
Does that tough gain thing right now
This
essentially mean
should
you'd have
attacks.
infinite
It's
mana?
and
No, not mana, but the stars thingy. Because you're not taking very much damage.
let's grab
You are
some
getting
hammers.
hit.
Got their attention, huh?
Very balanced.
Dang it.
Very balanced. Imagine the logic is that on a high enough difficulty setting, it doesn't matter, or it's not as good
take some
because you're gonna
attacks.
take way more damage
Because
when
it
you're hit. So you don't even want to
makes it-
target as much.
It feels nicer. Just a little bit. See here, this should be the last room. So, yeah, there's the shop. We get even more Zeus.
Hades.
And that works, but I'm going to pick double strike.
Ashes.
The
Alright, boy, we'll do this just like before.
we don't apply a lot of blitz.
This dog has got
Is
hands.
the problem, and the blitz we do apply is very easy to proc.
You'll soon be good and clean.
Who goes in the belly? Yeah, it is indeed Cerberus. With hands.
Struggling a little with this fight. It's been so long since I've done this version.
Struggling, you've lost like 30 health in this battle.
No heart that cannot break. Kneel, boy, that's enough.
Hello, servers.
Oh. Yes, that is Hades too.
Go find your master now. This way.
Very nice.
And there we go.
So the quick maths on that. It's very simple, but even simpler if you write it out. If we just say, for the sake of example, that you're going to take 1000 damage. Now, don't compare me with some other guy that opens paint and draws stuff. I won't draw boxes, don't you worry. Option 1 is percent, then flat. I'll just write an F. And option 2 is flat, then percent. There's of course also, when there's a lot of sources of damage reduction, there's the option that it's like, well, there's this flat amount, then this percentage amount, and then this flat amount, and then this, like, it can be a huge mix. But what really matters here is like the sequence of A then B, or B then A. If, for instance, we have, just for a somewhat extreme example where you can really feel it, we have 50% damage reduction and also 50 flat damage reduction. So both of them are 50. If it's percent first, then we would first hit 500 damage because we're reducing it by 50%, and then it would go down to 450 because you're reducing it by 50. If you instead reduce the flat amount first, you first go down to 950, and then you cut it in half, which leaves 475. The difference isn't huge because, like, the percent is much bigger than the flat amount. Like, in the flat first, the flat amount is worth 5% mitigation. Whereas in the percent first, the flat amount ends up being worth 10% mitigation. That's the important part. Like, at the end of the day, that's what matters, is that the flat amount is directly, like, how precious and valuable it is directly impacted by whether it goes first or last in the chain. And I believe what the result was that this is how it works in Hades. I don't believe Final Fantasy XIV has flat damage reduction amounts, so it's not really relevant to 14, but it could be relevant to some other game you like to play. Well, thank you very much for that, Nox. We like some maths. Nox says, I suspect it's the flat last. I mean, it would probably be something you could test, and I'm sure someone has. Right, so grand finale, we check out Shaq's clip. So I'm just gonna say right now that this clip should feature a major story boss from Act 2? So if you don't, if you're not been following my playthrough, it might be a boss you don't know. If you don't mind, fair enough. But here it comes. Last chance. Now I feel like I've made ample attempt to get everyone the chance to escape.
Okay.
Flight 1. The close call. I've been trying this for about 10 to 20 minutes before eventually giving Mael a full solo build. That is interesting. This was the tournament arc, right? No, wait a minute. This is the part with the additional tournament arc.
On me.
I see, Mizu. Enjoy.
Time to hit big.
Oof.
On guard. Blades sharp. Let's dance. On guard. Finesse and precision.
That is a solution. Very solid, a little bit of a rotation going. I was wondering why you were stockpiling that much AP to then do Swift Stride, but to get 2 flurries, that makes sense. Oof.
Okay.
Use an item. Just heal yourself.
Blades sharp.
I'm aware that you were put in a position where like you would have to like recast Spark again potentially to get back into your DPS mode, but if you don't heal yourself, like you're 1 hit away. You have to be perfect now, and what's really scary is when you have to be perfect, you might mess it up because you're scared of messing it up. It's a classic.
Finesse and precision.
But you got it. Whoa. Okay, yeah, that is a major spoiler.
Survive this.
My second time at Renoir after the party mix-up on the first try. Ah.
I'm waiting.
Forced us to respond.
Inverted affinity? What's inverted affinity? 50% more damage and heals will damage you. That seems like a terrible idea.
Won't help you this time.
Unless you also have stuff like confidence or whatever it's called to make you take less damage. Like, you could stack a lot of those kinds of abilities, but that's certainly an all-in tactic. Although, actually... you should probably not have Grim Harvest on such a setup. Oh, the pictures in question is only the first 3 turns. Okay. Okay, that makes sense. I thought it was like, you're just stuck with that.
Angry. Just disappointed.
Chroma is flowing.
You know, it is wild how cheap many of Luna's attacks are. I really couldn't get the timing for this one down. If I remember correctly, he didn't get to use that move in my fight, I think. Rudro, you still can't heal. Well, good thing you remembered.
Take cover.
Should be fighting by my side.
Or never.
Oh, you can heal now.
Time to
Ooh.
take risks.
You can heal now.
Here you go. Ready to carry.
Ah, the gradient attack at the end. When I first tried, I found if you didn't kill those quickly, they heal Reno off of 40,000. But it's just a full... that's a huge amount. It's really annoying. Uh-oh.
Time to hit big.
Time to hit big. Oh, wait, I'm stunned. Ooh. Ooh, that was close.
Prepare to move.
Nice. And now he's stunned. Let's see how you like it. Uh-oh. All of your spenders are expensive. Oh no. I liked, when I had CL on my team, I liked to have both a very cheap builder and a very cheap spender, precisely because being able to actually spend or build your Fortel, regardless of your AP, was really convenient, because when you have like Sun Charge or Moon Charge, doing the other one essentially just gives you a bunch of AP so you can keep going. It's not necessarily the optimal way to do it, but I like to do it like that. Very nice. I thought the fight was a different one for some reason. I was a little surprised that it was that one. But nice. I can't remember exactly. Maybe Aradil remembers. I feel like I was already doing like... And it's not meant as a negative or anything. It's more like just a, huh, that's weird. I feel like I was already doing like damage cap stuff frequently at that time. But it has been a while, so I feel like I can't even remember for certain when I started doing that. But man, there's also something to be said. I did see him try to use the delete a character move. You were already too strong. Yeah. I don't feel like Shaq, have you just been main questing the whole way? Like, what did I do different? What did I do wrong? How did I fail? I've not done any of the danger zones. I mean, technically, at the time of Renoir, I think I've done one danger zone. You optimize when you have elf GPS. That's true. Probably more the optimized bit. But I feel like I'm also reaching a point where I'm starting to have less and less damage boosting Luminous equipped because we're doing maximum damage anyway. I'm wondering what I am optimizing exactly. Anyway, cool. Very nice. And now I also will have to see what the heck I will do with the revelation that I've been sitting here, as I was saying earlier, as I discovered earlier, I've been sitting here confused as to why my PC sometimes seems to be janking up and being weird about it during a stream, only to discover that, oh, that's because you're utilizing 98% of your GPU. So it turns out that it doesn't actually have the juice remaining while keeping the game stable while you're focused on it, to also have an overlay and stuff. So I probably will have to reduce some settings somewhere to make that a little bit more stable. But I also need to see the GPU utilization difference as I stop the stream and stop recording, so that I can actually tell how much I have to go down for it to actually work. Like, imagine that it's like 80% when I'm not streaming. And I'm like, well, it looks fine. And then it goes up by 18% because that's where, like, just can't go farther or something. I don't know. Anyway, very, very nice. We still have a bunch of clips, but they are all from people that, as far as I can see, were not available today. So, I'm really glad for the awesome people that did hang out, and also those that thought it was fun to see some other games. But if you would like to be part of the Discord community server, there's a link right there in the chat. There you'll find, first of all, the clip reviews room, which is where I grab these clips for this reviewing part of the stream. And there are some suggestions and rules in regards to that in a pinned message in that room. And, well, as long as you don't use, like, copyrighted music, we're already pretty far along that. But you may, remember to explain what you're doing on your clip. Otherwise, I'll have difficulty knowing what to do with it. You'll also find the weekly schedule, where you'll find, which I usually update it Sunday or Monday. Find that in the schedule room. You also find the announcement room with links to videos and streams that are out. And if you grab the reminder role in the role assignments room, you get a notification whenever I post a video or a stream. There's also an extra one around 15 minutes before stream starts. You can catch it right when we go live. And If you would like to support the channel even more directly, you can follow, you can like, you can subscribe, you can become a member, you can super chat, you can cheer, you can do all of that goodness. And if you don't like any of that, there's also the Ko-Fi link in the description. It all helps me and the channel directly, so I can do weird stuff like this with all of you without being like worried about algorithms and stuff. So thank you so much for the support. But I do think that will be it from me tonight. But let's before we completely sign off. Also, thank you for the link, Saradil. Let's see if we can find a cool person to raid. A cool person to raid. A cool person to raid. If y'all have suggestions, you're free to say, to voice them. Otherwise, I'll be looking for somebody that I can find. Oh, there's a charity. A little bit of a charity stream going on. I know this guy. He looks pretty cool. Is that her? Cool person. Let's hop in on that. See if we can get them some attention. But on that note, thank you so much for hanging out in game and here on stream and joining me in these interesting conversations and the clip reviews. But with that said, good night, good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where in the world, and hope to see you all very soon. Bye bye.